Hey, thank you so much. So welcome everybody. I hope you have had a good day so far. So this segment is around how do you harness the value of digital transformation through your people. So we're going to take a people-centric approach to thinking about how do you manage your transformation journey. Okay, so before we go into any content, we're going to be very interactive in this segment. So I would like you all to access this URL whereby you're going to give us some of your thoughts and comments based on whatever we would be engaging with you. So if I could have some of you just log into classpoint.app and the class code is 36543. I'm just going to stop here for a while because I seem to be the only one that has logged in so far. Okay, I see 2 people. That's great. Okay, we're going to be engaging quite a bit because this is an interactive online workshop, as the name suggests. So we would definitely need you to, give us some feedback and inputs because we can't directly access and talk to you. Okay, we have 7 people. You can see on the top right-hand corner there, the number is increasing. We'll just pause here for a little while for the number to maybe increase a little bit more, maybe until 10 before we move on. So 7 people, and it's not increasing anymore. I was told there's 342 people who joined. So we're still missing about 330 something people. Okay, so we have 10 people now, 11, which is great. 13. Okay, I think people just need a little while. Don't worry, I won't wait until there's 300 people because that may take a little bit of time. Okay, I'm going to move on, and later on, maybe I'll just flip back to this slide again for all of us to hook on to this platform. So I'm Dr. Ning, and with me is Stacey, my partner in crime, and we're going to talk a bit about what we do before I talk a little bit about myself. So the company that we co-founded back in mid-2016 is called Voyage. And what Voyage does is that it helps company manage large-scale transformation, large-scale change. And how we do this is by helping clients build their change capability. And we also help to plan and manage the journey. So we also do some change management activities for the client along the journey. So when we need change management capability building, a large part of that is around training. And the client that we have the longest relationship with is actually GovTech. So since 2017, we have been training the GovTech project managers in managing change in digital projects. And I'm very proud to say that to date, we are hitting close to 400 project managers over this entire duration from 2017 until today. So I'm very happy that a lot of them have given us very good feedback about the course that we have shared with them. Okay, so a little bit about myself. So I'm Dr. Yong, and in addition to being the co-founder of Voyage, I also teach as an adjunct faculty in the Singapore Management University, where I teach a lot of courses around entrepreneurship and also business model transformation. So as a practitioner, as well as a teacher, I think it's a very good marriage of the 2 prongs that we are engaged with. So we're not just very theoretical people, right? But whatever we experience in our practice and in our implementation, we plow back into what we teach. So whatever we teach is always up to date and always relevant, because the change management landscape is very dynamic. The way that we implement change, especially digital transformation, has evolved over time. So being practitioner as well as a teacher has its merits because we are able to bring the best to the clients that we serve. So before I became an entrepreneur as well as an educator, I spent 15 years in a very large consulting company called Accenture. So in Accenture, my domain area focus was in change management. So I was involved in many, many large-scale projects, predominantly in the public sector space. So that's where I met Stacey, who was also my ex-colleague. And maybe I'll get her to say a few words about herself. Stacey, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Great afternoon to everybody here. Yes, so very excited to be here, and thanks, Ning, for the introduction. So I'm actually, as Ning has mentioned, we actually met a few years ago, and I've definitely left the consulting field and went in-house to become a organizational psychologist and also an internal or in-house change management lead, where I help sustain programs and projects beyond their transformation launch. And then now I've gone full circle and come back to the consulting field by setting up this boutique consulting company with Ning. So something interesting about myself is I actually love doing change management work, especially the work that talks after 6 months after go live or 8 months after go live, because I feel that that's where the most change efforts are needed, and it's a gap that has been missing in many of our projects. So it's really something that's quite passionate of mine. Right now, I'm actually based in Hong Kong. I'm waiting for the travel bubble to open so I can come back to Singapore. I can't wait to when we can finally have this conversation face to face.
Great, thanks, Stacey. Okay, so without further ado, let's launch into what we want to talk about today, which is about change. So I can't see you, but I want to get to know you and the change that you are experiencing in your organization. Okay, so I'm not talking about your personal life changes, okay? So we'll park that for another day. But let's talk about what organizational change are you going through now? So the way that I'm going to get you to tell me is I'm going to launch the word cloud. So those of you who are logged in will be able to type in your response on the class point. So the 22 of you, maybe 21 minus me, who is logged in will be able to type in the nature of the change that you are involved in right now. Okay, so we see the data transformation, digital transformation, digitalization. Okay, the organizational change is staying relevant to users. Interesting. Okay, strategic workforce training, excellent. Change of OD, so OD I'm assuming is org design. Okay, virtual working is quite is a very hot topic now. There are a lot, we see a lot of our clients are also focusing in that area. It's a huge topic. Okay. Okay, excellent. I think we get a variety. So it's not just only tech-related change, but we see a lot of process level, human resource-centric. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to close the submission now, and we're going to move on to our more work, same pay, less colleagues. Oh my gosh. Okay. I sometimes also feel the same as you. High five there. Okay, so I'm going to close submission and I'm going to move on to the next question. So all these are change. So this is the context of change for you to just remember that. So I'm going to save it for review. So how are you feeling about the change? So I'm thinking the person who says more work, less pay, less colleague must be on the right-hand side, not the left-hand side. Okay, how do you feel about the change? A, B, C, or D. You can have multiple, so you can choose more than one option. Wow, anxious and tired. Okay. If I could hear you, like if I could talk to you, I would be interested to talk to people who are excited and prepared to just understand what they are doing and what's the secret success, secret formula. But hopefully we can share some of that today. Okay, so okay, people are anxious and tired. Okay, so great, you have come to the right place, which hopefully we will be able to give you some tips and strategies of how this fatigue and this anxiety can be managed. Okay, I'm going to close submission here. Let's save it. So we saw that the highest were anxiety and fatigue. And this, unfortunately, is very common, especially in those type of changes that you have mentioned just now. It's very, very common. So you're not alone. So the thing that we want to talk about is how do we systematically manage change so that we are not like this, which is C and D that we saw just now. So feeling things are just hitting us left, right, center, but we want to be change ready. Okay. Please don't think that, hey, I think Dr. Yong and Stacey are just talking about fairy tale, right? How is that even possible? It's not easy, but hopefully we can shed some light on how it can be done systematically. So what are we going to talk about in such a big topic of change management in digital transformation? So in a nutshell, what we want to say is, in this workshop, we want to let you take away how do we have people working with you and not against you in the transformation. So why are you feeling so tired is because maybe people are resisting the change, or there are a lot of roadblocks relating to people, the processes, and we want to have people work with you, not against you. So really that's in a nutshell what we want to help you take away today. If I just break it down further, how do we achieve the objective of the workshop? Because it's still very big and it seems very ambitious. So we're going to talk about three things. The first is to introduce the concept of change management. There are a lot of people who have very, very different ideas of what is change management. So we just want to get everybody to be thinking about it on the same platform, on the same level. The second thing that we want to address is what is so unique about change management in the context of digital transformation. Because change management approach actually differs according to different contexts. And digital transformation is one specific type of context. And we want to explain what's so unique about the change approach to be used in digital transformation. And the last thing is, how do I even identify what are the risks areas and therefore be focused in what I am managing, right? So we'll talk about that in the last segment of the 1 hour. So we will have about, hopefully about 10 minutes or so when we get to the end so that you can ask some questions. So we'll talk about this topic now. What is change management in a very simple, in the simplest form? So if I were to ask you, and this question may seem a bit rhetoric, right? So there is an initiative A, so project A, where the driving force is much bigger than the restraining force. Or there's a project B where the driving force is smaller than the restraining force. Which one do you think the change is more likely to happen? Okay, if you all were to just text in your answer. Okay, so we have most people typing A. Whoever typed B, I'm assuming it's a typo error. You pressed wrongly. So definitely it's where the driving forces, the reasons for the change is much stronger than the objections to the change. Okay? The why we need to change is a lot stronger than why we don't need to change. Okay? So you can see here that overwhelmingly we have 20 people who responded. That definitely A is when the change is going to happen. So change management, in a nutshell, is a set of activities that systematically helps you to increase your good forces, meaning your driving forces, and decrease the resisting forces. Okay. So in a nutshell, systematically, so not haphazardly, so it's systematically increase the driving forces and systematically reduce the resisting forces. So later on, we will take a look at what are these driving and resisting forces. Okay, so next question for you. So all of you would have some experience in managing change. So can you tell me, in your own words, what are some of the examples of change management activities? Okay, so we know that change management is systematically increasing driving force, reducing resisting forces. So what are some of these activities? Oh, brainwashing. ARTCA. So you are familiar with the ProSci methodology of ARTCA, which is great. Okay, survey. So understanding how your customers or your clients or your users are feeling. Okay, great. Co-visioning, communications, firing people. Okay. Is that the one with the less, more work, less pay, less colleagues one? Because the colleagues are fired. Okay, very, very good. Okay, I don't see anything about being very systematic about this. I'm just looking for. Okay, not entirely seeing what I need to see, but management focus. Okay, I think all of you have done something to manage change. But if I were to ask you to kind of like put everything in one single definition, right? It's like a affirmative, conclusive definition of what change management is. How do we reconcile everything that you have represented there? So I see communication is something that is showing up very often. Okay, so I'm just going to close submission and move on. So a lot of times people have a lot of understanding of change management, and really change management is at the heart of three domain areas. So a lot of things that you're talking about, like team focus, management focus, is around the area of organizational behavior, because organizational change happens in an organization, and therefore teams, management, organizational processes, culture, etc., plays an important role. But at the heart of all change is actually individuals. So how individuals think, feel, are motivated is also a core tenet of change management, because it deals with the individual. So individual, teams, and the organization. And last but not least, very importantly, is around project management. Because I said that change management is about doing things systematically. And therefore, whatever we do, the activities like engagement, focus group communications, actually needs to be aligned with the management of the program or the project that the change is relating to. Okay. So change management is really at the center of these three areas of domain knowledge. So in a nutshell, if I were to define what change management is, so change management is a collective term. So everything that you have put out in the slide there, for all approaches to systematically prepare individuals, teams, and organizations in making organizational change. Okay, so this is very simple, but actually the complexity lies in what is the context that you are implementing the change for? Because different contexts, you will need a different approach. There is no cookie cutter approach to change management. And different magnitude of change will actually require different approach. So when we say different magnitude of change, there is a lot of studies that talks about what are the different types of magnitude of change. So I'm just going to use one of the more frequently cited model and give you some examples around what do we mean by that. So a smaller scale type of change is what we call developmental change. So for example, you implement a system for people to apply for leave, and it's on the mobile app. But basically, by and large, the process, the fields they need to fill in to apply for leave remains largely the same. So this is developmental, or we call it incremental change. The other type of change, which is a little bit bigger in magnitude, is called transitional change. In transitional change, we see the start and the end state of the change. So for example, merger of departments. So we know what is the current state and we know what the end state is. A transformation change is the one that is the biggest in magnitude. So it may be organization-wide. So the different facets of the organization will be impacted, or it may be a sector-wide transformation. So for example, the national healthcare record, electronic healthcare record, is one such kind of transformation. When we, in the old days where we have to fill out our tax form and then we will submit it and wait for a long time before our tax numbers are known to us. And then now we can either do it by e-services straight through, or we're just told that our threshold is too low. So all these ways, different ways of doing what we used to do, that transformation is actually quite widespread, not only to one organization, but to many. And even the social service sector transformation, which I was a part of. So the way that different voluntary welfare organizations work with each other, work with their beneficiary, as well as work with the government, all that is transformed. So that is change of a very, very, very significant magnitude that is even out of your organizational boundaries. Okay. So today we are going to look at one specific type of transformation change, which is digital transformation. So digital transformation, as the definition there suggests, and it's really a mouthful, and we will dissect it in a while, is that the change is very radical and it is at the business model level. Business model is not only for the commercial clients or commercial companies, it also applies to government, because it's the fundamental way that you operate, the reason for your being, right? So it's a radical change around that. And the shift is towards customer focused, and how the change is enabled is by means of implementing digital technology. So let's take a look at what is so unique in the change management approach for digital transformation. But in order for me to talk about what is unique, I will also need to explain what is the characteristic of a digital transformation. Then I will talk about what is the change management approach to deal with this uniqueness. So firstly, in a digital transformation, because it's transformation in nature, change is radical. So the jobs that you're holding today may not even be there tomorrow. The walls of departments may be broken down. What is internal versus what is external may all be changed. So change is very radical. And because change is very radical, it's almost like there is a future state that is very unknown and very ambiguous and maybe uncertain to a lot of people. Therefore, leadership is extremely important in articulating a compelling end state vision. And change management needs to focus on equipping leaders to be able to articulate that end state vision and to rally people along this uncertain journey. Okay? Because change is radical. People don't know what's ahead, and ambiguity may strike fear in people. The next implication of change being radical is that there will be likely to be a lot of stakeholder resistance, especially where people may feel like, is there even a place for me at the end state of the change? Or where is my place? Am I still doing my old job, or my old job is no more, or my old job is being transformed? What happens to me? What happens to my colleagues? What happened to the things that mean something to me? Okay. So a lot of work will need to go into managing stakeholder resistance around how they feel about that transformation. The second characteristic of digital transformation is that it's not just one project. It's typically comprising of one or more programs with multiple projects in there. So a lot of the projects, digital transformation projects that Stacey and I have been involved in would involve very long-term legacy overhaul of the system, legacy systems. It may involve agile projects whereby there are maybe mobile apps or certain maybe shorter term projects that allow people to see the outcome faster. So it's not just one project, it's many projects, and there may be many different people that's involved in it. So what is the change management implication of this? So firstly, we need to consider the impacts of these multiple projects on the people who are impacted. So can you imagine, maybe to you as the person who's implementing the project, this is your project, but to the person receiving the different projects, this person is being hit left, right, center, right? So we need to consider the impact on the user from a very people-centric approach. So we need to be understanding the change experience of the people who are at the receiving end. How do they accept and receive the change, the multiple changes? So this is one implication of having to manage multiple projects to assess and consider impacts from all these different projects on the receiver. Okay, the second one is we need to think about how to sustain the change. So a lot of us, when we implement projects, right, the day that we are the happiest is when the project goes live and then we have a good sleep. But you know what? The tire hits the road, and then we need to think about how do we sustain the change on a longer term basis and embed the change so that it sticks within the organization. This is the tough part. It's tough already for one project, so can you imagine how tough it is if we have multiple ongoing projects to continue to sustain the change and make sure that the behavior is a sustained one and it sticks with the people. So this is the second thing that we need to be considering. Okay, the third thing, and it's something that I mentioned earlier, is that we would need to, the boundaries, the organizational boundaries in digital transformation sometimes need to change. So something that has been done internally within the organization may now be done externally by our customers or by external partners. So this then impacts on the way that we structure our organization as well as the roles and the job definition. So part of change management is also looking at the org design, especially in a world that is post the transformation. Okay. Who is going to take the role? What does the organization look like to make it more agile, for example? Okay, lastly, transformations are characterized by having fluid end state, and so likewise for digital transformation. So change is definitely more iterative. So you don't maybe get to the end state in one large step, but it's through multiple iteration. So the approach to manage iterative change also needs to change. So when Stacey and I first started working in the change management domain area, we manage the change that we mainly manage is waterfall change. So it's very sequential. It's very structured. But gradually, we are getting more clients who are working on agile change. So agile change, not necessarily only in technology, but in various ways that the company is, experimenting with change. So the way that we need to manage change needs to keep up with the pace in which the change is happening. So the approach to managing the change needs to be more iterative in nature, as well as it needs to keep up with the pace and it's faster. Okay, last but not least, it's enabling the people to have digital competence. So a lot of times when we work with the users to get them to, tell us what do they see the future state as, a lot of times the users may not be very familiar with what do you mean by design thinking, what do you mean by agile, and a lot of conflicts arise even at the very onset of the project. So definitely digital competence is required to enable the whole organization, the stakeholders, to be more change ready to embrace digital transformation. Okay, so I have actually talked about the unique change management approach in 4 categories, right? Now you may be thinking, oh my gosh, that's like so many things, right? How do I bring it all together? Is there a framework or is there like a methodology? So as part of our work with GovTech, we actually simplified the way that all these activities hang together. So all the things that you put out like surveys, communications, etc., it can all be hung on the change management framework that you see here. So by and large, change management activities can be grouped into 3 stages. The first stage is planning the journey. Okay, so before you even start on the actual change itself, you need to do some preparation work. Let's put it in that simple way. And after you have done the preparation work, the next stage is implementing the change itself. And finally, as I mentioned just now, is to embed the change, which is to sustain the change so that it is no longer a change, it's BAU. But why is it in a circle? It's back to the iterative nature that I mentioned to you. It's no longer in a chevron, which is like linear. You need to go through it again and again because, as we said, right, we don't implement change in a sequential way. It's more iterative, fast-paced, and experimental in nature. So likewise with the change approach, it's actually cyclical and learning is continuous. So we're not going to give you like a brain concussion today by going through all the activities, but this is just for you to just have a sense that behind the 3 stages, there are a lot of different activities that we have categorized them to match against that stage. So doing the correct things at the correct time. Okay, so you may be thinking, wow, that's pretty neat. So we've got everything, sorted out, so we know what change management is about. We know the things to look out for in a digital transformation. But ta-da! Why does 84% of companies still fail at digital transformation? Okay. So I'm now going to hand the time over to Stacey, who's going to talk you through how do we identify some of the risk and sidestep some of these pitfalls. Stacey, over to you.
Thanks, Ning. That was great. Yeah, so let's have a talk about statistics for digital transformation, right? So years of research on transformation has shown that the success rate of transformation efforts is consistently low. Less than 30% succeed. So last year in May, McKinsey research reported that actually digital transformations, they're not just transformations, but digital transformations are even more difficult. Only 16% have reported success. And ability to sustain these changes in the long term. Maybe an additional 7% of them says, okay, we see performance improvement, but we're not so sure about being able to sustain these performance. So even like, digitally savvy industries like high-tech, media, telco, they're struggling. Among these industries, success rates still hover around 26%. They don't really exceed past that. And even more so in traditional industries like oil and gas, automotive, infrastructure, pharmaceuticals, maybe even governments, it's even more challenging. The success rates are actually somewhere about 4 to 11%. So with these alarming statistics around us and with your experience, I want to ask you, what do you think causes change or transformation to fail? So let's bring back the word cloud. Let's bring back the class point. Tell me, what are some observations? What makes change or transformation fail? So Shini, can you open the, thank you. Unrealistic expectation that came out very fast. Yes, leadership as well. Yes. Unclear objectives, resistance.
Very good.
Yeah, very good. Any more? I'm sure all of us, this is like the time for us to, say all of the things that we wanted to say and could never say it because we had to be PC. Yeah, funding, people. Yeah. I love that. It's people, right? Because one of the lousy boss, one of the best quotes I've ever heard was, organizations don't change, people do. So if you can't really make change go down to the people level, it is almost impossible for organizations then to change at that level. Only they need to change, not me. Oh, I love that. This is something that I can definitely identify with. I'm currently going through a mega change right now, and I can definitely feel and resonate some of these things that you're saying because it's coming across in any of the countries that I'm helping in. Exactly. Micromanagers, impatience, unclear outcomes, a lot about expectations, processes, a lot of lack of training. So given that we know that these are some of the pitfalls, why then do we not manage them properly? How, we know that these are things that are coming up in the horizon. Is there not a better way to make sure that when we embark on our digital transformation journeys, how can we systematically ensure that these areas are addressed? So thanks, Shining, for this and helpful if you can help me close it. I love those responses because it just shows how much you all understand that change is hard. And it really is. It can be boiled, and it can be boiled down to four main areas. But at Change Voyage, we kind of take a risk approach to managing change. So if you think about risk management, we think about how much risk is coming and how much can we tolerate it. And if we can't tolerate it, then we need to make sure that we can either swallow it or we do something to mitigate it. It's the same thing with change. In change, it means being able to recognize how much change is coming in, exactly like what the umbrella is. So how much change is coming in, the arrow that's giving us that change. And also then talking about our umbrella, right, which is actually within our organization. Are we able to tolerate this change? Just using a Singlish word, are we able to kang it? And so we always encourage those embarking on digital transformations to start first with a change risk analysis. Let's identify which of the four main areas are you high or low risk in, so we can understand how best to treat it. Now, there are a lot of research out there, frameworks on, what can you do to manage change, manage your readiness check. And essentially, we feel that it boils down to four key main things. So the first thing is the nature of change. The second is the level of support, the value or the benefits of change, and the receptiveness of change. So understanding the risk to these four areas and being able to tackle them simultaneously can really be what makes or break a transformation. It's when the risk either flips too far or that we are able and maybe more prepared, more excited to when the risk comes. So when we look at what we mean by the nature of risk, right, we're asking ourselves, how messy is it going to be? How big is this change? How small is it? what is the impact going to be? Let's get specific. Is the change going to impact people in terms of their roles, their job scope, their org structure? Will it involve a fundamental change in the way that they are working and their day-to-day process? Will they need to unlearn, relearn a new system? And more importantly, is change going to be affected the same way, or will others be impacted more than the others? Will some departments see change a little bit more than what it is, or will it be something that they can kind of reverse back or manage? So this is what it means to look at the nature of change coming. The next is whether people buy into the change. So we're talking now about whether or not there is a perceived level of support. We need to know people buy into change if they perceive that they are sufficiently equipped for it. And this is seen through whether their leaders and their managers champion it. It's whether or not there's a consistent message in what leaders say and do, as well as whether or not they think they have the sufficient resources for it. So if people feel that they have enough time, they have enough materials and tools, we have already moved them from a state of resistance to contemplation. So maybe I can do it. Maybe it is possible, because actually, if I'm given enough time, if I'm given enough time to process, digest, and given enough materials to help solve this, it can be done. So the switch has already been made if we can already establish the level of support. Another important area to identify and to measure is about the value of change. So this is really understanding the underlying reason and compelling case for change. So is the benefits clear? Or are we simply changing for the sake of changing? Are people wondering, what is this change about? Are we sharp on how are we framing the message and being clear? I saw before some people said, what's in it for me? Being very clear on that. This is exactly it. And this is something that sometimes we do very well. But when we talk about benefits, is it benefits for Singapore? Is it benefits for the organization? Or are we talking about benefits to the individual? Because what might be good to the organization may not be good to me. So, the next part where we're talking about, another part of this is, are we sharp on how are we framing the right message to the right people? So do people look at it the same way? So do people want this change? Is the change kind of, sorry about that. Sorry. I have a dog here. So do people want the change, and are they seeing the change the same way? So when we talk about when people see the change positively, do we want people to see it as something else? And how are we being proactive about the change, and how are people being, how is the change being perceived in it? So finally, that's the third part. And finally, the fourth part is about, even if we realize that we need to change, we need to give people the tools to change, it is also a matter of how easy is it for the organization to change. And it boils down to organizational context and past experiences. So if an organization is going through multiple changes at one go, there is exhaustion, there is a mental block to receiving more, we need to be able to understand this and be able to cut and chunk the change so that it is digestible to people. And secondly, also, do they have, one of the key predictors of whether or not people accept change readily in a company is whether or not they have previously bad experiences before. So if I have experienced with change poorly before, chances are the next time a change is coming to me, I'm going to be thinking, no, not again. I can't believe this. Here we go again. But if I actually had a positive experience, then what it means is that I will be more receptive. I will think, I've done this before. It was successful. I've quite enjoyed myself. So maybe this time will be the same. So one of the key fundamental ways of being able to shift perception or change is also about managing the reputation of a project. Being able to kind of reframe our projects, demonstrate success demonstrate that there is movement so that people can feel that actually this is something that's positive. So a part of change management, as people say, is also reputation management. I want to make sure that I can make sure that whatever has been positioned in front of my employees or the end users is something that is positive. So this is, you first have to tell them, especially if you are having it if the change is if they're having a bad experience to change, then it's going to be quite difficult because their first impressions will be quite hard to change. You will first need to tell them how this is different before you tell them the details. All right, so those are the 4 key areas of what makes and breaks a transformation. Now, Hsin and I, we have come up with a simple risk assessment tool for you. It's free to use. You can use it right now. You can take the link, you can scan the QR code, and it's really a very quick way. It's just a few questions, 13 questions for you to see how does the change in your organization, how does it relate across these 4 areas? Is it high, medium, or low? And overall, it will give you a score as well as a downloadable report on where are the risk areas in your project and help highlight what are the next steps for you to focus on. So you can also download the report and it will show you area by area, segments by segments. Is it the value of change? Is it the nature of change? Is it the level of perceived support? So this is how, it will flag out, are you high, medium, or low risk? And based on those areas, it can then give you an understanding, hey, maybe these are the 3 to 4 areas I need to start focusing on. These are the 5 to 6 things that I might need to have a conversation with in my project, because these are the areas that they are high risk, so we probably need to target them. So do I need to target communications, training, leadership? Do I need to target messaging, framing? Do I need to target business processes? We will not know until you have done an analysis. Are these your key areas? Is this where the needle is that you need to move? So we really encourage everyone when we start our projects, when we start our workshops, with GovTech, and this is where I'll start talking about the 2-day workshop that we have. When we start this, it really is about first identifying. Let's identify the risk. Let's have a sound understanding. Where are we? What is the assessment that we have? What are the key areas that we need to focus on? So in the 2-day workshop that we have, we do share how can we tackle this when the change risks are high. What do you do when it's high? What do you do when it's low? What do you do when there's so many things that's high? And what do you do if there's a few little things that's low? So, we need to make sure that we build the right change by planning the change right. So, I think just to close off, so with change, there's a high degree of impact. So we will, with these 4 key bucket areas, we will also be in the workshop, tell you exactly how do we then support you in each of these areas. So with the nature of change, we will share how do you structure your plan so you can deal with each element in a sequential and phase it out meaningfully. We will help you architect and design out a change journey. We will teach you actually what are the steps, what are the phases of people going through a change, and what you need to do in each step. So it's quite a simple way, and people who usually come out from our workshop, they've already developed a change journey, or they can already mock up or prototype out a change journey quite quickly. So with those who are struggling to demonstrate support, where you say that your level of support is low, where your risk of your leaders is high, we share tools. How do you manage your stakeholders? How do you get leadership alignment? How do you run a workshop to get leadership alignment? How do you move people from resistance to acceptance? What are the signs that you watch out for? How do you do certain reframing techniques to help people shift their thinking? And if you think that actually maybe the business case for change is unclear, it's just a top-down directive, people don't really buy into it. So if people don't buy into it, how can we make it clearer to them? How can we reframe it? How can we make it tangible? How can we help you craft the right messaging so that you are clear on what success looks like and you deliver the right messages? And finally, for those who belong in organizations that have been historically non-receptive to change, we also provide behavioral tactics. Hsin talked about the cross-section of project management, OB, as well as psychology. So we teach behavioral tactics on how do you make change stick? How do you use emotional, psychological elements to layer your change interventions? So it's more than just training and comms, and we can employ more meaningful channels that will shift mindset and behavior. A very fun thing that we like to do as well is we like to also do a mini personality quiz during the course to just showcase how different people react to change differently. It's just human nature. And if people react to change differently, then what can you do? So when we employ these things in tangent, it will ultimately reduce the risk of change and increase your success rate to get people to buy in and join you in the change. And that's really what we hope for in our workshops to GovTech. So we also invite you to come and join us. It's really about increasing the likelihood of success and getting that digital transformation statistics success rate to go up. So thank you.
Okay, so we have actually reached the end of our very short presentation. Hopefully you could have some takeaways from our sharing. So now we have about 10 minutes on the clock left, and we would be open to answering any questions that you may have. Yeah, I do see the chat is...
I think there's one. So Gretchen has asked, how do we manage the change journey?
Okay, so for us to answer this question, you have to come to our course.
So it's actually really interesting. And actually I'm having the same conversations currently right now in my organization that I'm helping in. So actually there is not just one journey. There's actually one big journey that's being thrown to the organization. And then my recommendation is always from that one big journey. It's how do you architect and orchestrate mini journeys so that, first of all, the change becomes digestible to people. But secondly, it's also become a little bit more personable. So how do we personalize and customize the change journey for different people so that they feel that they are going on something that belongs to them? So that's really how we have done it. So within the workshop, we teach you how do you recognize this, how do you create this, and then how do you sequence it, and what kind of behaviors and outcomes are you looking for, and what kind of activities can you do in each of these different stages.
I think just to add on question one, right? In a change journey, there is just like you need to be a helicopter, because helicopter will need to fly up high and then you see the entire forest, but you also need to go down very low so that you're at the tree level. Remember just now I said that the definition of change management, right, is you help to manage the change for individuals, teams, and the entire organization at large, right? So you have to kind of be a helicopter and look at the whole journey at a more macro level, and also then be able to kind of zoom down to the individual level and understand how the individuals and the teams are responding to the change. So this is very generic, I can understand, and the specific of how do you manage the journey actually differs from a case-to-case basis. But I think the best insight that I got over the so many years practicing change management is that you need to be at a high level, looking at the journey, and also coming down to the individual. Okay, just taking the next question. What is the difference between management of change versus change management? Okay, so I am going to split hairs. Change management, if you Google, right, actually there is a very structured body of knowledge behind this domain area. It's just like your project management methodology. So there is the PMI that is behind this body of knowledge, and they have very specific and structured modules that is supporting change management as a body of knowledge. So change management as a body of knowledge then supports various people in how they manage the change, because managing the change is a very big, is a very general term in terms of when there's a change, what is the way that you can make the change successful, and by being deliberate in the way that you are paving the journey. Not everything about managing the change falls into change management's body of knowledge. So if you are interested, you could actually look up, for example, the Association for Change Management Professional. So ACMP has got very clear body of knowledge, so modules of what change management comprise of. It's just like PMI. So in summary, change management refers to the domain and body of knowledge. Management of change is a larger term.
Yeah, I really like this. I really like this play on words as well, Shining, because you remember how we also have like a joke, an internal joke within change management. So, when I first started and like people were very confused about the change management domain, they always say, "Oh, Stacey, what do you do?" And I say change management. And one time I got this this report back, which was, "Oh, you do change management. Is it to change the management?" And I started laughing. And obviously, initially, my response was, "No, it's not." And as I continued working, right, and as we do things like behavioral shifts, leadership alignment, we do things like stakeholder engagement, stakeholder management, influence map. We do things like change story, change journeys for leaders. We do things like ownership of leaders and equipping managers to lead teams in change. I start thinking actually change management is somewhat changing the management sometimes. It's not maybe a physical movement, maybe sometimes, but it really is also about changing the mindset of the management. And so, when, for example, currently what I'm doing right now, offering training courses is just a part of what Change Voyage does. But we also, for example, also do provide professional services for change management, such as advisory, coaching. We do, kind of hands-on as well, if you would like that kind of support within a project. So that's something that we do offer.
Any further questions? So maybe how do you communicate change in the workplace effectively? Okay, I think there are a lot of different things that you need to consider. Of course, you have to consider, the things like what is the message, who is the communicator, who is the sender. So I think these are quite basic stuff that most people know. But what we find that most people do not know when they come to our class in terms of how to communicate change effectively is they don't consider at what stage is the stakeholder at with regards to the change. So it's just like dating, right? When you first meet the person that you're interested in, you don't talk about marriage immediately, right? That is like maybe further down the road when all of you have got accustomed to each other, which is the change. So likewise, when we work on communication, we want to consider at what stage of the stakeholder commitment curve that person is at. Then we will be matching the communication messages, the channels, the standards, etc., according to what stage the person is at. Okay? Because otherwise it may be too little or it may be too much. So it really depends on where the person is at. Then you can actually communicate more effectively.
Yeah, but the number one tip for like communicating effectively is to really understand actually who are you communicating to and who do they want to hear from. So if they want to hear, and the best person that they want to hear from is not a standard email box. Maybe even it's not even the top guy. Maybe it's actually the person I want to hear from about change is my direct manager. So then how are you going to make sure that the direct manager is equipped to be able to communicate this? So I think that's really something that we try and shift in our when we try and teach change capability, because we're really trying to teach a capability like a mindset change, thinking from the state of the users and then thinking what's best for them. So I like the other questions, which is coming in on any tips on coping with failed change management. Oh my goodness,
I think if there's change management, I think it's the change that is failed. The change management won't fail.
So I always joke with Ning on this because sometimes I feel like I'm only brought in to do change triage. So when a project goes wrong, when it has failed, when he needs to roll back, when he needs to tell a sad story, when the leaders need to go, oh no, I don't know how to tell, the timeline has been delayed, we're cancelling things, or there's going to be some very difficult shifts. And so I'm brought in. And usually when I'm brought in at the last minute. So, I love to share my horror stories and my scars. And very happy to have an offline chat on that. So if I could, if we can actually provide our contact number, that would be great, Hsin, because I think then it will be great to be able to share this and share how we have reframed projects, how we have kind of tried to reposition things and relaunch things, and also just being able to, I think, just think very carefully the final objective before we run our campaigns for this.
Okay, I'm just going to take the last two questions because we are kind of running behind a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer the two questions, and I'm going to let you download this deck in PDF so that you can see our LinkedIn details and you can ping any of us. So how does a government agency engage you directly? So you just ping me or Stacey on LinkedIn, or I'm sure the organizer has our contact, then we can have discussion. Okay, can you provide 3 tips on driving culture change so that staff can embrace a new way of doing things? Culture change is one component of making staff embrace a new way of doing things, but maybe let me answer it in a broader fashion. So we use this framework, which we call the head, heart, hand technique. Head means that you just tell people rationally why they have to change. Okay, so it's just like your kids, right? Oh, you must study, you must study, you must study. Okay, so some kids understand and you don't need to say anymore, but some kids just think that it's noise. Okay, so this is head. So it appeals to the logic, the rationale. And a lot of us already do a lot of that, like newsletters, town hall, etc. The second way is by heart. So how can you help people embrace a new way of doing things through the emotion? So this, sometimes you can use leaders, so people that they respect do it, and therefore they also do it. Or you can potentially understand why it matters to them. So for example, I worked in a government agency before, and we were going to automate a large proportion of the processing work that this department was doing. And naturally, a lot of people were very anxious about being replaced or displaced. So we asked the question of, if we have this new system, what are the things that you wanted to do now in your work that you have no time to do it? And when we asked that question, right, then suddenly the conversation was changed, because people didn't see the change as a threat. Instead, they see it as an enabler to help them achieve their professional aspirations more, right? So this is how we appeal to the heart. Okay, the third thing is around the hand. So hand is around, okay, what is the structure that is in place that will drive people to be more experimental, for example. And this is a large part of where the culture comes in. So traditionally, from a culture perspective, are people open-minded? Does the company's policy and procedures actually take into consideration encouraging or incentivizing people to take calculated risk? So the hand part is where we see a lot of the cultural aspects come in. But of course, culture can also come in the head and the heart aspect. So in summary, we looked at the head, heart, hand, of which culture comes in some of these aspects. Okay, so that's all we have. I'm just going to see if I can get you to. Okay, so I'm going to get to share the PDF, and you can download the deck as well as the responses, all the responses that you have keyed in just now. So you can scan this or type in the link and you can get the entire deck. Okay, I'm just going to leave this on for another few minutes. Okay, I can't really see how many people are downloaded, but I'm assuming people are interested enough to download it. So I have my LinkedIn and Stacey's LinkedIn contact in there, or you can just go to our Change Voyage website, www.changevoyage.com, and you can just submit a query. It will come to us immediately. Okay, and we're happy to be in touch and have further conversations.
Thank you.